She gave a hidden signal at the rest stop. But 14 police dogs were the only ones who understood. The officers said they'd never seen anything like it. 14 police dogs, all resting in the shade, all calm and quiet, until one invisible sound cut through the air and every single head snapped toward the same spot. No command, no warning, just instinct. And within seconds, those dogs were sprinting across the desert as if someone's life depended on it. No one understood what pulled them there, no one but the little girl who couldn't scream, and the old German shepherd who refused to let her go unheard. The desert always looked honest at this hour, stretched wide and flat under the late Texas sun, too bright to hide anything. But that afternoon at the Eagle Pass Highway rest stop, the heat shimmered in a way that made everything feel unreal, like the world was holding its breath. Cars pulled in and out. A family of tourists argued over snacks. A trucker wiped sweat from his brow while scrolling his phone. Everything looked ordinary. Too ordinary. No one noticed the old Ford F-150 parked at the far edge of the lot, sun-baked and leaning slightly to one side. Its paint was chalky white, flaking in strips along the bed. Rust clung to the wheel wells like dried wounds. It should have looked abandoned, forgotten, and it almost did. Inside the truck bed, shielded by dented metal walls, 7-year-old Mia Carter curled into herself, knees tight to her chest, wrists bound with coarse nylon rope that bit into her skin every time she moved. Dust clung to her cheeks, turning tear tracks into pale streaks. Her lips were cracked from heat. Her breathing shook in small, silent bursts. She had tried to scream earlier. Once, the sound never made it past her throat. The man had leaned in close, eyes too calm, voice too steady, and told her exactly what would happen if she tried again. She believed him. She was 7. Danger had a face now, and it was his. Travis Holt stood a few yards away with the hood open, pretending to fiddle with the engine. He wore a faded mechanic's shirt and mirrored sunglasses that hid where he was looking. No one questioned him. No one asked why the truck had been idling there for so long. No one wondered why a man fixing his engine kept glancing toward the back. People walked past him without a pause, the way people do when life gives them too much to look at and not enough reason to look closely. Mia felt sweat slide down her spine. Her hands were numb. A tremor ran through her fingers. She couldn't cry anymore. Her body was beyond that. But inside her something stubborn still burned. She remembered something. A flicker. A video on her mum's phone. Police dogs hearing sounds that humans couldn't. Dogs detecting danger before anyone else did. She stared at the metal floor of the truck bed. Her bound feet rested against it. Her shoes were small, light, almost silent. Almost. Mia closed her eyes and tapped her heel. Tap, 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 barely audible. The sound died almost instantly in the thick heat. No human ear could have caught it over the hum of passing engines. She knew that, but she wasn't trying to reach people. Across the rest stop, under the strip of shade thrown by a canopy tent, 14 German shepherds rested beside their handlers. They belonged to Maverick County's K-9 division, en route to a joint federal training exercise. Their tongues lolled in the heat, paws stretched across concrete still warm from the morning sun. A couple dozed lightly. Others scanned the highway. Ranger, the oldest of them, lay closest to the edge. 8 years of service had carved wisdom into the lines of his face. A faint scar sliced through the fur above his right eye, a remnant of a winter raid long past. His coat was darker than the others, thicker around the shoulders, like a fading soldier still built for battle. He had outlasted 2 partners. His new one, Deputy Logan Hale, always said Ranger saw the world in colors humans didn't even know existed. Ranger's ears twitched. He lifted his head. Silence pooled inside him, tuned sharper than instinct alone. Something vibrated across the desert floor, not a sound, a pattern, a tremor, a heartbeat trying to stay alive. He stood. One by one, the other dogs followed, rising in perfect sequence, like unseen strings pulled them upright. 14 heads turned toward the same point in the parking lot. Logan frowned. He had been unscrewing a thermos when he noticed the tension ripple through the unit. Ranger's stare was locked so intensely on the old Ford F-150 that even before Logan followed his gaze, his pulse tightened. "What is it, buddy?" Logan whispered. Ranger didn't blink, didn't breathe, didn't move. Then Mia tapped again. Tap, tap, Ranger's entire body snapped taut. His tail stiffened, nose flared, breath caught. Logan had seen Ranger react to gunshots, explosives, even the faintest trace of narcotics miles old. But this was different. This was primal, urgent. All 14 K9s shifted their weight forward in the same heartbeat. The desert wind swept through the rest stop, carrying nothing but heat and sand. But the dogs heard something else, something too soft, too desperate, too small for any human to notice. And then Ranger did something Logan had never seen him do without a command. He lunged. No warning bark, no hesitation, no glancing back for permission. Just a powerful surge forward, claws scraping asphalt as he shot towards the truck bed. The rest of the unit followed in a thundering wave of fur and muscle. Travelers screamed. A woman dropped her drink. A man stumbled back, yelling, "Are those dogs loose?" But Logan felt it before he understood it. They weren't charging. They were answering. He sprinted after them, boots pounding the pavement. The sun stabbed into his eyes. The heat wavered around him. His breath caught as he saw Ranger reach the truck first, leaping onto the tailgate in a single, effortless bound, landing with a heavy thud beside the terrified little girl curled in the corner. Ranger froze. His ears pressed back. His nose hovered inches from Mia's wrists, from the angry red marks left by rope. He let out a low rumble, protective, vibrating through the metal beneath them. Logan skidded to a stop, chest burning. Then, out of the corner of his eye, something moved. Not Ranger, not Travis. Behind the vending machines by the edge of the service road, a second shadow ducked out of sight. Just a flicker, a silhouette moving fast. Someone else had been watching. Logan's breath hitched. This wasn't just a kidnapping. Someone had been waiting for the dogs to react. Someone had wanted to see if the girl would be found. Ranger's growl deepened, sharp and focused, aimed not at the girl, not at the truck, but at the place the shadow had vanished. And for the first time since arriving at the rest stop, Logan understood something that made the hair on his neck rise. The danger wasn't just inside the truck. It was circling them. The moment Ranger leapt onto the truck bed, Logan's pulse hit a familiar, unwelcome rhythm. It was the same thud he felt the night everything in his life split in half. The moment that carved a scar across him deeper than anything he'd ever taken in uniform. He pushed it down, forcing himself back into the present, but memories never really stayed buried. Not for long. Logan Hale had been wearing the badge for almost 15 years. He had seen violence in corners of Texas most people pretended didn't exist. He had stood over bodies when the sun was rising, watched families break apart in hallways that smelled like old coffee and grief. But nothing had ever broken him like that afternoon 3 years earlier on a quiet stretch of State Road 277. One moment he was driving behind his wife's car, windows down, listening to his daughter Lily sing along to a song she loved. The next moment, a truck drifted across the center line. A heartbeat, a scream, metal folding like paper. Lily was gone before the paramedics arrived. His wife left 6 months later. She said she couldn't look at him without seeing the accident. Logan didn't blame her. He couldn't look in the mirror without seeing it either. Since then, he had lived with a silence he never asked for and a guilt that refused to fade. Ranger had come into his life during that same year, almost like fate was trying to give him something to hold on to. The dog's original partner, Sergeant Mason Crane, had been killed during a narcotics raid. Ranger refused to eat for 2 days, refused to train for more than a week. He lay in the corner of the K9 kennels, head on his paws, waiting for footsteps that would never return. The department nearly retired him. But Logan stepped forward before anyone could finish the paperwork. He didn't explain why. He just walked into the kennel, sat on the concrete next to the grieving dog, and stayed until Ranger finally shifted his weight, just enough to rest his head against Logan's leg. 2 survivors clinging to the last familiar thing they had. Since then, Ranger had slept on a blanket beside Logan's bed, rode in the passenger seat of his unit, and watched him the way only a creature who understood loss could. They didn't fix each other. That wasn't how grief worked. But they reached a kind of truce with it. That was why Logan felt an electric sting in his chest when Ranger reacted the way he did at the rest stop. Ranger had never ignored a command, never broken formation, never bolted like that. Something had reached him on a level deeper than training. As Logan stood near the truck bed trying to steady his breathing, he caught a glimpse of Travis Holt pretending to fuss with the engine again. The man's hands were shaking just slightly. It was subtle, but Logan had learned to watch for the smallest fractures in human behavior. Fear made people twitch. Guilt made them sweat. But the way Travis kept checking the rearview mirrors told Logan something else entirely. He wasn't afraid of being caught. He was afraid of someone else arriving first. Logan's phone buzzed in his pocket, but he didn't look. He couldn't break focus. Ranger was still inside the truck, standing stiff beside the girl, his entire body angled like a shield. The other K9s had formed a semicircle around the vehicle, their chests rising and falling in united rhythm. It looked less like a reaction and more like a formation they had practiced their entire lives. Deputy Carla Reyes jogged up beside him, her voice tight. "Logan, they all reacted at once. Every single dog. What would trigger that?" Logan shook his head. "Nothing I've ever seen. Not like this. In 8 years of managing the K9 unit, not one moment matched this. A single dog sometimes caught a scent the others missed. 2 dogs occasionally responded together. But 14 German shepherds moving as if pulled by the same invisible thread, responding in perfect sync to a signal no human had detected, that was unheard of. It made the hair on Logan's arms lift in a slow, rising wave. He climbed onto the tailgate, crouching next to Ranger. The truck bed radiated heat like a cast-iron skillet. Mia's knees were drawn to her chest, her eyes glassy with fear and exhaustion. She looked like a child who had been holding her breath for hours. Logan felt something heavy twist in his ribs, a familiar ache where old guilt lived. Ranger leaned in close to Mia again. Logan had seen the dog confront armed suspects, search for explosives, track fugitives across miles of brush. But he had never seen Ranger be this gentle. His nose brushed her wrist, then her knee, checking her scent, her breathing, the tiny tremors rolling through her body. A protector's inventory. Logan whispered softly, "Easy, Ranger. Stay with her." Ranger didn't move, didn't blink. The only sign he heard Logan was the slight relaxation in his shoulders, the way his tail lowered from rigid alert to controlled readiness. And then, out of nowhere, Mia touched the dog's fur. Just one small, trembling hand reaching toward the safest thing she could find. The impact was instant. Ranger's stance softened just enough to let her lean into him. Logan felt the moment like a punch to the chest. He looked toward the sun-baked parking lot, at the people gathering with their phones out. None of them understood what they were seeing. They thought this was just a dramatic rescue. They didn't know the truth. The dogs had answered the girl before anyone even realized she was there. Reyes stepped closer. Logan, dispatch says no missing child report matches her yet. Logan didn't look away from Mia. That doesn't matter. She didn't get here by accident. Ranger suddenly stiffened again, head jerking up. His eyes locked toward the gas station roofline. Logan followed his gaze and saw something small, almost invisible. A glint, like sunlight bouncing off glass. Someone was watching them. Logan's breath caught for a split second. Then anger rose, sharp and familiar. It wasn't just the danger that tightened in him. It was the memory of Lily, the helplessness, the failure. He had lived 3 years believing he would never get another moment where he could save a child in time. But here he was, and no one was taking this one from him. He straightened, motioning 2 deputies toward the roof. Reyes called for backup. The K9s shifted into a tighter ring around the truck bed, as if anticipating the order before it came. Logan whispered to Ranger again, low enough that only the dog could hear him. "Not this time, partner. We don't lose this one." Ranger didn't break focus. His heartbeat, steady and strong, pulsed against Mia's shoulder. 2 survivors, 2 protectors. And for the first time in years, Logan felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel. A second chance. Ranger moved first, no command, no hesitation, just a low, vibrating growl that came from somewhere ancient inside him. His paws pressed forward on the hot concrete as if the earth itself had pulled him toward the Ford F-150. The entire rest stop seemed to pause. The air thickened. Even the heat held still. 14 German shepherds snapped into alignment behind him. Ears up, bodies rigid, breaths short and sharp. Not one barked, not one lunged out of fear. This was something older than training, something wired into marrow. A silent alert. The kind that told handlers across the world to drop whatever they were doing and pay attention. Deputy Logan Hale felt his chest tighten. He had trained these dogs for years. He had watched them scent explosives buried feet underground, track fugitives through thunderstorms, detect things no instrument on the market could catch. Yet he had never seen this. Not 14 at once. Not with this level of instinctive unity. Carla Reyes whispered beside him, voice caught in her throat. "Logan, what are they hearing?" Logan didn't answer. His mind flashed back to the sound he barely noticed earlier, a faint metallic echo he had dismissed as wind. Now he understood. The dogs weren't reacting to danger. They were reacting to a signal, something the little girl had sent. Ranger advanced in a slow prowl, muscles rolling under his coat like tightly wound cables. His eyes stayed fixed on the back of the truck, as if he could see through metal. The other K9s mirrored his steps, forming a widening arc around him, a living wedge that cut through the stillness of the parking lot. Logan moved with them, every nerve alive. He could feel the shift in the air. A hum, a tremor, something pressing against the edges of his senses that he couldn't translate. But the dogs could. Then it happened again. Tap, then another tap. Faint, too faint for any human to register. But the K9s froze mid-stride, like a single pulse had traveled through all their bodies at once. Ranger's head snapped up, his tail stiffened, his breath caught in his throat. Then the world broke open. Ranger launched toward the truck in a dead sprint. The rest of the K9s followed as if the ground itself had given them permission. 14 bodies, one unified force, pounding the pavement in a sound that shook dust from the rooftops. The tourists screamed. A woman stumbled back against the vending machine, dropping her soda. A teenage boy tripped trying to climb onto a bench. Parents grabbed their kids, pulling them behind parked cars, convinced the dogs had lost control and were about to attack. Someone yelled, "Get those dogs under control!" But Logan had already broken into a run. He knew what this was. The dogs weren't charging in fear or frenzy. They were answering a call no one else could hear. Ranger reached the truck first, vaulting onto the tailgate with a single leap. The metal clanged under his weight. Mia jerked upright, eyes wide with terror at the sudden crashing presence beside her. But when she met Ranger's gaze, something shifted in her expression. Her fear didn't dissolve, but it loosened enough for her to breathe. Ranger was not the danger. He was the answer. As the rest of the canines surrounded the truck, forming a wall of fur and muscle, Logan climbed onto the bumper and steadied himself with one hand on the metal frame. Heat radiated through his uniform. His heart pounded so loudly he could feel it in his palms. Mia's small body trembled. Her wrists were raw, skin scraped where the rope had dug too deep. The moment she saw Logan, her lip quivered. She tried to speak. The sound came out broken, air without voice. Ranger leaned in, placing his head gently against her leg. His breath was warm, steady, grounding. And that was the moment Logan saw something that made a chill run through him. A handprint. On the inside of the truck bed's metal wall. Not dust, not dirt. A clean smear where someone had pressed their palm just hours earlier. A second, smaller smudge beside it. There had been struggle here. Logan knelt, lowering his voice. "Mia, can you hear me?" She nodded, tears streaking down her cheeks. He kept his voice soft. "Did you tap on the truck, sweetheart?" Her breath caught. She touched the metal floor with her shoe, timidly, like she wasn't sure if she was allowed. Tap. Ranger flinched, ears snapping toward the sound again, confirming everything Logan suspected. The signal wasn't random. It wasn't an accident. This little girl had called for help in the only way she could, and the dogs had heard her. Before Logan could say anything else, a sound cut through the air. Not from the girl, not from the canines, from somewhere behind the gas station. A low scrape, like gravel shifting under weight. Logan turned sharply. Reyes whispered, "Did you hear that?" Ranger snarled, sudden and sharp, eyes locked not on the girl anymore, but on the horizon behind the building. The other dogs stiffened instantly. Their formation tightened, their focus sharpened. Logan felt it before he understood it. Someone else was here. Someone who had heard the girl's signal too. Someone who didn't want her rescued. Logan stood slowly, one hand sliding toward his holster. His voice dropped to a tense whisper. "Carla, someone is watching us." She swallowed hard. "Where?" Logan stepped down from the tailgate. Ranger moved beside him, not leaving the girl, but angling his body in a way that allowed him to guard both her and whatever was out there. Not far beyond the rows of parked cars, a figure slipped behind a concrete pillar. Just a shadow, but deliberate, purposeful. Logan felt the old wound in his chest flare. Not today. Not another child. He whispered to Ranger under his breath, "Stay sharp, partner." Ranger answered with a low rumble that vibrated through the ground beneath them. The dogs had heard something no human could, and now the danger was no longer hidden. The circle of canines tightened around the Ford F-150, 14 trained bodies forming a living barricade between Mia and whatever threat still lingered in the desert heat. The dogs didn't bark. They didn't lunge. They simply stood, muscles tense, eyes locked outward, each one reading the air the way soldiers read a battlefield. Ranger stayed in the truck bed beside Mia, refusing to move even an inch away from her. His paws were planted firmly, bracing his body like he expected another impact. His breathing was steady, controlled, as if he were lending his rhythm to the terrified child beside him. Logan climbed into the bed slowly, careful not to startle her. The rope around her wrists was tight enough to leave deep impressions. Rope burn, abrasion, signs of long hours spent struggling in silence. He took out his pocket knife, flipped it open, and spoke low. You're okay, Mia. I'm going to get this off you. Just stay still for me. Her breath hitched, not quite a sob, not quite a word. A trapped sound from a throat too exhausted to speak. Ranger pressed closer. The girl's fingers curled instinctively into his fur as Logan cut the rope away. When the fibers snapped, her arms fell limply to her lap. She didn't scream. She didn't even whimper. Tears spilled quietly, sliding down her cheeks without a sound. Silent crying is the kind that always hit hardest. Logan felt the old ache in his ribs again, sharp and unwelcome. It was the same ache he'd felt the day they pulled him from the wreckage, the day he realized some things break a person so deeply that sound can't escape. It wasn't until Ranger nudged his head under Mia's arm, guiding her back toward his chest, that her breathing eased enough to steady. "Good boy," Logan whispered, voice thick. Ranger didn't glance at him. His focus stayed on Mia, his loyalty so absolute it felt like a force of nature. Logan crouched lower. "Mia, sweetheart, I need to ask you something. Was there someone else with you? Someone who brought you here?" Her lips trembled. She tried to form a word, but her throat closed again. She swallowed hard, then lifted one shaking hand and pointed toward the open desert behind the rest stop. Not toward the parking lot, not toward the building, out toward the stretching miles of sand and shale. Logan felt the shift before he saw it. Every canine in the circle stopped breathing for half a second. 14 heads turned in perfect unison, their gaze locking onto the same horizon Mia pointed to. Carla Reyes murmured, "Logan, they're tracking something." "Not something," Logan said. "Someone." Ranger growled, barely audible but more dangerous than any shout. His tail stiffened. His gaze never left the direction Mia indicated. The other canines mirrored him, lifting their noses just slightly, tasting the wind. Logan climbed out of the truck bed, boots hitting the ground with a thud that felt louder than it should have. The sun glared off the asphalt, making the horizon ripple like broken glass. The desert looked empty, but emptiness didn't mean safety. Reyes stepped up beside him. She had her hand near her holster. "What are they picking up? I don't see anyone." Logan scanned the sand, slow and deliberate. "Neither do I." Something flickered at the edge of his vision. A ripple in the heat wave. A brief shadow near a cluster of rocks far beyond the last parked vehicle. But when he looked directly, it was gone. He exhaled, grounding himself. The dogs didn't hallucinate. If they were reacting like this, something was there. Behind him, Mia pressed her face into Ranger's fur, her small shoulders shaking. Ranger let her cling to him, but his attention stayed razor-sharp, every muscle tuned toward the desert. Logan kept his voice calm. "Mia, was the man who took you still here? Did he leave you and go out that way?" Her fingers tightened in Ranger's coat. She nodded. A quiet, terrified nod. Carla swore softly under her breath. Logan stood straighter, tension crawling up his spine. So the kidnapper hadn't abandoned her. He hadn't fled. He was still here, somewhere close enough for the dogs to sense him, which meant he was watching. Logan motioned to 2 deputies. "I want a sweep of the perimeter. Check the service road, the dumpsters, the rocks at the south edge. Stay behind cover." The 2 deputies sprinted off. Ranger suddenly lowered his head and inhaled deeply. His ears angled sharply. His stare narrowed. Logan recognized that posture instantly. Scent lock. Ranger had caught something specific, something that didn't belong to this rest stop. "What is it, buddy?" Logan asked. Ranger answered with a sharp, low bark. One sound. A pinpoint direction. The exact place Mia had pointed to. Logan's pulse hammered. The dogs weren't reacting to a distant threat. They were reacting to a recent one. Someone had been there minutes ago, maybe seconds. He turned to Reyes. Get the rest of the unit ready. We're not dealing with a single suspect. There's more to this." Carla blinked. "What do you mean?" Logan's jaw tightened. "I mean, this wasn't a one-man job. You don't leave a kid tied up in a truck and walk off into the desert without a plan." Ranger growled again, deeper this time. Suddenly, one of the younger canines, Shadow, barked loudly, snapping toward a new sound, a distant engine, not from the highway, from the open land behind the rest stop. Carla grabbed her radio. "Dispatch, we've got vehicle movement behind the ridge, possible suspect." Logan didn't wait. He spoke to Ranger in a voice only the dog truly understood. "Lead us." Ranger leapt from the truck in a fluid motion, landing with precision. The other dogs broke formation, splitting into two teams without a single verbal cue. Half surrounded Mia, forming a tighter guard around her. The others followed Ranger into the desert. Logan ran after them, heat blasting his face. His boots sank slightly in the soft sand. The horizon blurred as the sun burned low behind it. He glanced back once, just long enough to see Mia watching him with wide, terrified eyes, Ranger's absence already leaving her trembling. He gave her a small nod meant to reassure her. Then he faced forward again. If the kidnapper was still close, Logan wasn't going to lose him. Not today. Not ever again. The desert behind the rest stop looked endless. A flat, sun-bleached expanse of sand and brittle rock, stretching towards the horizon like a place the world had forgotten. But the canines didn't see emptiness. They saw clues, movement, disturbances hidden beneath the surface. Their paws skimmed across the ground with precision, noses low, muscles coiled with purpose. Logan jogged behind Ranger, sweat sliding down his temples, every step pounding with the weight of urgency. He had seen desperate people try to run before. They always left traces. Even the best criminals couldn't hide from 14 dogs bred to notice the smallest fracture in the earth. The first sign appeared near a line of dusty boulders. Ranger stopped abruptly, lowering his head to a shallow impression in the sand. Logan crouched beside him. Footprint. Fresh. Heavy. Someone had put their full weight into it, like they were running or carrying something. A few yards farther, Carla Reyes called out, "Over here." The sand near her boots was disturbed in uneven crescents, as though someone had dragged their feet in a hurry. Next to the marks lay a scrap of fabric. Logan plucked it up, a corner of a small backpack, pink with faded stars. Mia's. Ranger sniffed the fabric, lips curling slightly. His reaction wasn't fear, it was anger, a deep, instinctive frustration that vibrated through his chest. Logan nodded. He was carrying her back here. Probably brought her out of the truck at some point. Maybe checking the area, maybe waiting. Carla knelt. Why bring her back into the truck then? Because he expected to return, Logan said quietly. Someone interrupted him or forced him to leave her there faster than planned. Ranger pulled away from the group, his attention snagged by something deeper in the rocks. He walked with slow deliberation, tail stiff and straight, as if each footstep confirmed a suspicion only he could sense. The other canines followed him in a loose triangle formation, every ear forward, every inhale sharp. Logan felt his pulse rise. Ranger did not lead without reason. When they reached the rocks, Ranger stopped near a narrow crevice. The space was too small for a grown man to slip into, but large enough to hide something else. Carla shone her flashlight. Something glinted inside. Logan reached in and pulled out a folded sheet of paper, stiff with dust. When he opened it, the edges cracked. A road map. The highways around the border circled in red ink. Rest stops marked at intervals. 3 of the circles had check marks beside them. Logan felt a bitter taste rise in his throat. He's done this before. Carla exhaled. More than once. Before Logan could respond, one of the dogs barked sharply from behind the boulders. Not a warning bark, a discovery bark. Logan sprinted toward the sound. Behind the rocks, half hidden in shadow, a man hunched against the stone, arms wrapped tight around his knees. Travis Holt, the mechanic, the one pretending to fix his truck. He looked up as the officers approached, face pale under the dirt. Sweat collected above his lip. His breathing was too fast, too high in the chest. Not the breathing of someone exhausted, the breathing of someone terrified. "Hands where we can see them," Carla ordered. Travis lifted them shakily. "I didn't do anything, I swear!" Ranger stepped forward, and Travis flinched hard enough that his back hit the stone behind him. Logan noticed the twitch. Dogs never overreacted. If Travis was that afraid of Ranger, it meant he had a reason. Logan stepped closer. "Why'd you run?" "I didn't run," Travis stammered. "I was just trying to stay out of the way. Those dogs looked like they were going to tear someone up." Ranger lowered his head, inhaling Travis's scent. It wasn't just sweat and engine oil. There was something else. Sharp, acrid, chemical. Ranger froze, then let out a deep, guttural growl that didn't sound like any growl he'd given earlier. Carla whispered, "What is that smell?" Logan knew. He'd smelled it before in crime scenes involving abductions. A cleaning chemical used to wipe down surfaces quickly. The kind used by people who didn't want fingerprints found on anything. Travis tried to scoot back further, but the rock wall stopped him. "Look, I just drive," he said, hands trembling. "I don't touch anyone. I don't talk to anyone. I get paid to drop something off and pick something up. I don't know details." Logan grabbed him by the collar, pulling him up just enough so their eyes met. "You transported her." Travis swallowed hard. His eyes flicked towards the direction Mia had been found. I didn't want to. They threatened me. Said they'd come after me next. Said they were watching." Ranger barked sharply, stepping closer, hackles raised. Not out of anger, out of certainty. Logan tightened his grip. "Who were you working for?" Travis shook his head quickly, panic rising. "I don't know his name, I swear. They wear masks sometimes. Gloves. I only see him when I hand off the truck. I never keep the kid. I'm just the driver." Logan's voice dropped. "The map. Why did you mark rest stops on it?" Travis squeezed his eyes shut. "Because they tell me where to drop the car next. I leave it. Someone else picks it up and takes the kid. That's the system. I swear I don't stay. I don't hurt anyone." Carla stepped in. "How many kids have you moved?" Travis shook his head violently. "I don't know. A few. Maybe more. They blindfold me sometimes. They move the schedule around. I'm just trying to stay alive." Ranger suddenly sniffed Travis's boots, then jerked his head back with a sharp, disgusted huff. He bared his teeth, not in aggression but in recognition. Logan knew that reaction. Ranger had scented multiple small individuals on him, not just Mia. Travis saw Ranger's expression and broke. "I didn't want any part of this. They said if I talked, they'd wipe out my whole family. You don't understand. He's not even the worst one. He's just the collector." Logan felt something inside him go cold. Then who is he delivering them to? Travis trembled so hard his knees buckled. He whispered the words more than he spoke them. "The man who took her from the gas station yesterday, the one in the black SUV." Logan's stomach twisted. So the man watching from the service road wasn't Travis. Travis wasn't the kidnapper. He was the delivery man. Ranger stepped even closer, standing tall, tail stiff, chest out, a soldier positioning himself between a threat and those he loved. Travis backed into the rock, shaking uncontrollably now. Logan spoke quietly. "You're going to tell us everything. Every name, every drop point, every face you remember." Travis nodded frantically. "I will. I swear I will. Just keep them away from me. The man in the SUV, he's not done. He came back to finish the job. You have no idea what he's capable of." Logan stared at him, rage rising like a slow burn. He didn't look at Travis long. Instead, he looked at Ranger. At the dog whose instincts had led them here. The dog who had already proven he could hear a child's desperate call across an entire rest stop. Logan placed a hand on Ranger's back. "Find him," Logan whispered. Ranger lifted his head. The other dogs grew silent. And somewhere across the desert, an engine rumbled faintly through the heat. The desert felt wrong before anyone understood why. A pressure built in the air, a heavy vibration that made the sand tremble against Ranger's paws. He lifted his head sharply, ears tilting toward the service road behind the rest stop. The other canines froze, bodies tightening like they sensed a storm coming. Then the sound broke through. An engine. Fast. Too fast. Logan spun just as a black SUV shot over the ridge, tires skidding through the loose sand, sending a wall of dust exploding behind it. The vehicle swerved viciously toward the rest stop, the driver completely ignoring the road, the speed limit, the people. He was aiming for the truck. For Mia. Carla shouted into her radio, "Vehicle incoming, high speed, possible suspect." Before her words even hit the air, the K9s reacted. 14 dogs launched into motion with a precision that made several spectators scream. They didn't scatter. They didn't panic. They formed a perfect, almost impossible wall around the Ford F-150, their bodies forming a tactical ring, each one stepping into place like they'd practiced the maneuver 1,000 times. Logan had seen coordinated dog movements, but nothing like this. It felt instinctive, ancient, something passed through bloodlines long before training manuals existed. Ranger stayed at the front of the formation, standing between Mia and the incoming SUV. His growl rolled across the asphalt like thunder. The SUV tore into the parking lot, fishtailing wildly before slamming to a stop so hard its front bumper scraped the concrete. Travelers dove behind cars. A family ran toward the restrooms, dragging their children behind them. The driver's door swung open. He stepped out. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a sun-bleached jacket stained with grease. His hair was unkempt, his eyes burning with something colder than rage. Logan recognized the look instantly. He had seen it in men with no conscience left, men who had already crossed every line they once swore they never would. Elias Crowder, a long-haul trucker turned trafficker. Rumors about him had floated through the department for months. No confirmed arrests, no clear fingerprints, a ghost on the highway, a monster wearing a driver's license, the kind of man who didn't fear dying because he had already stopped fearing anything at all. He took one step forward and smiled. Not wide, not loud, just a dead curve of the mouth. "Give her to me." Logan drew his weapon. "You're not taking anyone." Crowder ignored him. His gaze found Mia trembling in the truck bed, Ranger pressed against her. He didn't even blink. "She's not the only one," he said loudly, almost proudly. "You have no idea how many are waiting." Mia whimpered. Ranger growled, stepping closer to her, shielding her fully with his body. Crowder saw it and laughed. "Look at that. The mutt thinks he can stop me." Ranger bared his teeth, and the wind shifted. A faint metallic glint appeared in Crowder's hand. A knife. He lunged. Everything exploded at once. Ranger launched first. His paws dug into the asphalt, launching his full weight directly at Crowder's chest. The other K9s surged together, blocking every exit path, cutting off routes Crowder could use to reach the truck. Crowder swung the knife sideways, aiming for Ranger's side. Logan shouted, "Ranger, left!" Ranger twisted midair. The blade sliced past his ribs, missing him by inches. He hit Crowder full force, knocking him backward against the SUV. The impact cracked the sound barrier around them. Dust spiraled into the air. Crowder grunted, grabbing Ranger's fur with one hand, pushing against him with desperate strength. His knife swung again, wild and vicious, but Ranger dropped low, dodging with a fluid motion that looked too deliberate to be luck. The other K9s closed in. Shadow cut off Crowder's escape on the right. Axel and Duke blocked his left. Crowder swung the knife again, slashing wildly. He was fast, strong, fueled by desperation. But the dogs were faster. Ranger reared back, jaws open, and struck. Not to maim, not to kill, but to stop. He clamped onto Crowder's forearm, twisting the wrist until the knife fell to the concrete with a metallic clatter. Crowder yelled, collapsing to one knee. Logan rushed in, tackling him from behind. He pinned the man's arm, wrenching it behind his back with controlled force. Crowder thrashed. "You think this stops anything? You think she's the only one? You don't know how big this is?" Logan pressed him harder into the ground. "Shut up." Ranger stayed locked on Crowder's other arm, ready to react if the man tried to reach for another weapon. His growl reverberated through the pavement. Deputies swarmed in. Carla clicked handcuffs around Crowder's wrists, snapping them shut with finality. Crowder leaned his head back and grinned, even with his face pressed into the dirt. "You're too late." Ranger snarled, inches from his cheek. Crowder's grin faltered for the first time. "Good boy," Logan whispered. The crowd that had gathered kept their distance, phones up, recording, trying to make sense of the scene. They whispered things like those dogs saved that child, and they moved like they were reading each other's minds. But none of them understood the truth. Ranger hadn't just stopped the kidnapper. He had sensed him coming, before the sound of the engine, before the SUV crested the ridge, before Logan even saw a shadow move. The dogs had known. Ranger stepped back from Crowder at Logan's command, chest rising and falling with deep, controlled breaths. He walked back to the Ford F-150, climbing into the bed again. Mia threw her arms around his neck, burying her face in his fur. Ranger didn't look at Logan. He didn't need to. The danger was over, and yet the warning still hung in the air. "You don't know how big this is." Logan met Carla's eyes. "We need to search everything. Now." Carla nodded. "Every car, every inch of desert. And if he's telling the truth." Logan finished for her. "Then Mia is only the beginning." But Ranger wasn't looking at the desert anymore. He was staring at the horizon, as if waiting for something else to appear. Night spread across the desert like a slow, cooling tide. The rest stop, once burning under the Texas sun, now shimmered under deep blue shadows and flashing red and blue lights. The air smelled of dust, gasoline, and something else. Relief mixed with fear, the kind that comes after surviving something you didn't yet understand. Crowder was shoved into the back of the cruiser, wrists pinned behind him, his smile finally gone. Logan slammed the door and stepped back, chest rising, adrenaline still vibrating through his bones. Ranger stood beside him, posture tall, steady, unshaken. His fur was dusted with dirt from the fight, but his eyes burned clear and bright. Carla approached, her radio buzzing in her hand. "Crowder's just the driver. He's the muscle. The brains aren't here." Logan knew. Crowder's words still rang in his skull. "You think she's the only one?" The sense of unfinished danger settled heavy in his gut. Behind them, Travis Holt, the mechanic who had first taken Mia, sat cuffed on the ground, pale, trembling. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't defiant. He looked like a man who had finally realized what he'd become. He talked the moment he saw Crowder locked away. "They had me move kids. I never touched them. I swear, I never—" He swallowed, voice quivering. "There's a safe house in the desert. 40 miles west, a trailer, no IDs, no phones. They keep them there before moving them." Logan stiffened. "How many?" Travis shut his eyes. "I don't know, 3 last week. Maybe more now. I didn't know what to do anymore." Logan didn't forgive him. He couldn't. But he listened. Carla clicked her radio. "Dispatch, get FBI Child Exploitation Task Force on this now. We have a secondary site, suspected multiple victims. Copy. Agents en route. The desert suddenly felt much larger, much darker. Mia sat in the back of an ambulance, wrapped in a soft blue blanket the paramedics had given her. Her face was streaked with dust and dried tears. She looked impossibly small, yet somehow unbreakable. When Logan tried to step closer, she flinched. Ranger didn't. He hopped up beside her, settling at her hip, his warm weight pressing against her. She leaned into him immediately, her small fingers curling into the fur at his neck. Her trembling stopped. Her breathing eased. Logan watched, something in his chest tightening. Ranger wasn't just guarding her. He was grounding her, steadying her, giving her the voice she hadn't been able to find. The medic checked her pulse, her pupils, her wrists. She's stable, a little dehydrated, some abrasions, but she'll be all right. When the medic tried to lay her down on the stretcher, she shook her head violently, gripping Ranger harder. No, don't make him go. Ranger looked at Logan, waiting. Logan nodded. Let him stay. The medic adjusted the stretcher. We can make it work. Logan stood beside them while the doors of the ambulance stayed open. Mia's eyes drifted towards him, still guarded, still unsure. But this time she didn't flinch. Logan lowered his voice. You're safe now. No one will take you again. She swallowed. Her voice came out small, fragile, barely there. They said if I screamed, they'd come back. Logan crouched to her level. You did everything right, and Ranger heard you. Mia's eyes filled again. I didn't think anyone would hear me. But he did. Ranger nudged her shoulder gently, a soft rumble in his throat. Not alert, but comfort. Logan felt a tremor in his chest he hadn't expected. 3 years ago he'd lost his daughter in an instant, an accident so fast he still replayed it every night, wondering what he could have done differently. The guilt had devoured the man he used to be. Ranger had filled the silence, but never the whole, until now. Watching Mia cling to Ranger, trusting him before she trusted anyone else, made something shift inside Logan. Not a miracle, not healing, but the beginning of a breath he had forgotten how to take. Carla jogged toward him. FBI wants us at the site. They need tracking support. It's big, Logan. They think Crowder's crew might be tied to the interstate network they've been chasing. Logan looked back at Mia. She was watching him, her fingers buried in Ranger's fur, her eyes still shining with lingering fear, but now holding a flicker of light. He stepped closer. Mia, I need to go help the other kids. But Ranger will stay with you. He won't let anyone near you. Not ever. She hesitated, then whispered. Will you come back? Logan's throat tightened. He held her gaze. I will. Ranger shifted, planting his body closer to her, as if saying the same thing. Logan's radio crackled. All units responding to the desert safe house. Roll out now. He straightened. Carla's team loaded into their cruisers. Ranger stayed in the ambulance beside Mia, watching Logan leave with unwavering focus. Logan paused before climbing into his SUV, looking back one last time. Ranger wasn't just protecting her. He was protecting the part of Logan that had been broken for years. And for the first time since the accident, Logan let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, saving Mia wasn't the only healing happening tonight. He shut the SUV door. Justice was finally in motion. And healing had already begun. The desert looked different than it had that day. Softer, safer. The kind of quiet that didn't suffocate but settled gently, like a long-held breath finally released. Eagle Pass rest stop, once just a lonely patch of asphalt between Texas and New Mexico, now carried a presence it hadn't before. A new security booth stood near the entrance. Bright cameras watched from every angle. Fresh pavement replaced the cracked asphalt. Colourful murals stretched along the restroom walls, painted by local kids and volunteers. Sunrises, mountains, and in the centre, 14 German shepherd silhouettes moving in formation. Just beneath them, a bronze plaque glimmered, in honour of the Maverick County K9 unit. 14 guardians who heard what no one else could. People stopped to read it every day. Truckers left cold water bottles at its base. Families snapped photos. Travellers whispered to their kids about bravery, instinct, and a little girl whose quiet signal changed everything. Logan stood beside the plaque now, hands in his pockets, watching the late afternoon light spill over the desert. The sun hit Ranger's back and lit his fur in faded gold. Ranger sat slowly, easing into the grass with the careful movements of a dog who had earned every grey hair in his muzzle. He was older now, a little slower, his joints stiffened in the mornings, but his eyes still held that calm, sharp warmth, the same look he'd given Mia the moment he found her. Logan knelt beside him. "How you doing today, old man?" Ranger exhaled through his nose, a low, gravelly huff. Logan scratched under his chin, feeling the wiry softness of age in his fur. A year had changed them both. Logan had expected to carry the same weight forever. The loss of his daughter, the guilt that carved into him like stone. But time, Ranger, and a little girl who refused to quit had shifted something in him. Healing didn't come with fireworks. It came with small, quiet steps. Footsteps crunched behind him. Light, quick, unmistakable. Logan turned just as Mia ran toward him across the parking lot, her shoes slapping the pavement. Her hair, once tangled and dusty, now bounced in a neat ponytail. She wore a bright backpack covered in doodles. Her cheeks were full again, her eyes clear. A year of safety lived in them. Behind her, her adoptive parents followed. Mark and Elise Bradford, a kind couple who lived 40 minutes north. They gave Logan a wave. He returned it. Mia skidded to a stop and dropped to her knees beside Ranger. Ranger's tail thumped once, then again. Slow but certain. "Hi, buddy," Mia whispered, wrapping her arms around his neck. Ranger leaned into her, closing his eyes as she pressed her cheek against his fur. Logan watched the moment settle between them. Ranger never let just anyone hold him that way. But Mia was different. She always had been. Mark spoke first. She wouldn't leave the house until we stopped here. Said it was tradition. Elise smiled. Monthly tradition. Logan felt a warmth he wasn't used to. He stood as Mia sat cross-legged beside Ranger, whispering secrets into his fur. Things about her week, her school friends, a spelling test she hadn't wanted to take. Ranger listened with the same intensity he'd shown the day he first heard her tapping for help. Elise stepped beside Logan. She's doing so well. She sleeps through the night most days. She still has nightmares sometimes, but never when she knows she's going to see Ranger. Logan nodded. "I'm glad. You're part of that, you know," Elise added. "She calls you her desert family." Logan's breath caught, the words landing in a place he had thought was long gone. He cleared his throat. "I didn't do much." Elise gave him a knowing look. "You did more than you think." Mia popped up suddenly, grabbing Logan's sleeve. "Come on! We haven't looked at the garden yet." Garden wasn't the right word for it. A few weeks after the case broke nationwide, people began leaving flowers at the rest stop. For the kids rescued from Crowder's network, for the K9s, for hope. Volunteers eventually built a small memorial garden beside the parking lot. Desert shrubs, lavender, yucca, and white stones arranged in quiet circles. Mia tugged Logan's hand, pulling him toward it. Ranger followed at her side, his gait slower but steady. They walked the path together. A breeze moved through the yucca leaves. The sky stretched wide, endless, the way only desert skies could. Mia stopped in front of a stone painted with a child's name, one of the other victims rescued that night. She bent down, touching the stone gently. Logan saw the sadness flicker in her eyes, but something else too. Strength, quiet and resilient. The kind that grows only after you've survived something that tried to break you. She stood again and looked up at him. "Do you think they're okay now?" Logan nodded softly. "I think they're safe, just like you." Mia thought about that for a moment, then slipped her small hand into Ranger's fur. Ranger's tail brushed against her leg, slow but steady. They walked back toward the main lot together. Mark and Elise waited by their SUV, waving them over. Mia hugged Ranger tightly. "I'll see you next month, okay, boy?" Ranger lowered his head, touching his muzzle to her shoulder, a gesture soft enough to break anyone's heart. Logan watched them pull away, the SUV rolling back toward the highway. Mia pressed her palm against the window until the car disappeared into the horizon. When the silence finally settled, Logan sat beside Ranger on the grass, the sky now dimming into deep orange. He ran a hand down Ranger's back. "You did good, partner. Real good." Ranger leaned against him, eyes half closed, tired but content. Logan looked across the desert. The place that once held fear and danger now held memory and meaning. A year later, the world hadn't forgotten, and neither had he. Family didn't always come from blood. Sometimes it came from survival, from instinct, from a 7-year-old girl tapping 3 quiet beats into metal. Sometimes it came from a dog who heard it. Ranger shifted again, resting his chin on Logan's knee. Logan exhaled slowly, feeling something inside him settle at last, a peace he hadn't known he could feel again. Healing, he realized, had arrived in the form of a little girl and a dog who refused to give up. He rested his hand on Ranger's head. "Let's go home, old man." The Maverick County Sheriff's Office didn't usually host school field trips. Kids preferred the fire station, the wildlife refuge, even the old mission museum down the road. But today, the K-9 unit's training barn buzzed with voices, sneakers squeaking on the polished concrete, and the unmistakable sound of awe as 20 middle schoolers filed in. They paused the moment they saw Ranger. Older, slower, grayer, but still holding himself with the quiet authority of a veteran. His ears perked, just slightly, as the children settled into a semicircle on the floor. Logan stood beside him, one hand resting gently on the dog's back, a gesture that felt more like gratitude than ownership. "All right," Logan said, smiling. "Who's ready to talk, K-9 heroes?" Hands shot up everywhere. A girl asked about training. Another wanted to know if K-9s got scared. Someone in the back asked if dogs liked wearing vests or thought they were uncomfortable. Logan answered each softly, letting the kids laugh, letting Ranger do a slow stroll along the front row so everyone could scratch his neck. Ranger took his time, pausing every now and then to rest his hips or nuzzle a shy student who hovered behind the others. Then one boy in the front, a quiet kid with sandy hair and a notebook balanced on his knees, lifted his hand. "Deputy Hale, how did Ranger know that girl needed help that day? I mean, if nobody else heard her?" The room grew still. Even the kids who'd been whispering fell silent. Logan glanced down at Ranger. The dog met his eyes, that calm, steady look he'd held the day he'd leapt into the back of the Ford and found Mia curled in fear. Logan drew in a breath. It wasn't a rehearsed answer. It wasn't something he'd ever fully explained to anyone. "Dogs don't wait for instructions the way we do," he began. "They listen to things we miss. Small things. Quiet things. The world talks to them differently." The boy frowned thoughtfully. But how did he know she was scared? Logan's mouth lifted into a gentle smile. Because their instincts aren't blocked by fear like ours are. Sometimes, their courage is louder than anything a human can hear. The kids looked at Ranger with new reverence, but Logan's thoughts drifted to Mia, tapping her heel against metal, terrified but refusing to give up. To Ranger, head snapping toward that whisper of sound no human caught. To the 14 dogs who ran, without hesitation. Legacy wasn't medals or news stories. It was moments like this, children learning what instinct, courage, and kindness looked like. Carla stepped forward, carrying a large, flat tube. "All right, kids, we've got something special to show you today." She unrolled the drawing gently and clipped it onto the display board. The room gasped. It was a hand-painted picture, childlike but powerful. Mia's work. She had sent it last month with a note written in careful handwriting. For Ranger's room, so he never forgets he heard me. The drawing showed a little girl curled in the bed of a pickup truck, her foot tapping the metal. And across the lot stood the silhouette of 14 German shepherds, ears raised, heads turned towards her. The caption she wrote underneath read, "They heard me, when no one else did." Logan swallowed hard. The kids in the room stared at the painting with wide eyes. One girl whispered, "That's beautiful." Ranger walked toward it slowly. He lifted his nose as if he recognized the scent of memory somehow captured in the paint. Then he sat beneath it, quiet and still, as if taking his place in the story once again. Logan cleared his throat and turned back to the students. "You want to talk about legacy?" He asked softly. "It's not about the arrest, or the news, or even the rescue. It's about what lasts after. It's about courage echoing long after the moment has passed." He nodded toward the picture. "Mia's stronger now, safer. She's growing, healing, and she wanted you all to know something." He pointed to the caption. "Your voice matters, even when it's small." Silence followed. Not heavy, not sad, just full. One of the teachers brushed at her eyes discreetly. A boy in the back whispered, "Ranger's a real hero." Logan looked down at him, then at Ranger, who had somehow curled himself beside the drawing, resting his chin on his paws beneath his painted silhouette. "He's more than that," Logan said quietly. "He's a listener, a protector, a partner, a reminder that instinct, real instinct, can save a life." The bell rang outside the barn, signaling pickup time. The kids crowded Ranger one last time, offering quick hugs, pats, selfies, promises to draw pictures or write essays about him. Ranger took it all patiently, gently. When the last student left, Logan knelt beside him. "Look at you," he murmured, "leaving a legacy bigger than anything I could write in a report." Ranger nudged him once, a soft, steady press of his nose. Logan smiled. "I think she'd be proud you're still watching out for her." Ranger's tail brushed the ground. The barn grew quiet again, but the image of Mia's drawing, bright, brave, hopeful, hung on the wall like a pulse. Legacy wasn't a story you told. It was a story still being lived. The studio lights were warm, almost too bright, but Logan didn't mind. He sat tall in the interview chair, uniform crisp, boots polished. Ranger lay at his feet, head lifted, ears relaxed, but alert in that way only an old working dog could manage. The camera crew shuffled around, adjusting cables, checking angles. The low murmur of conversation faded when the host entered. Emily Reyes, the local news anchor, stepped forward with a practiced smile. "Thanks for being here, Deputy Hale. And Ranger, of course." Ranger flicked an ear at his name, earning a quiet laugh from the crew. Logan gave a modest nod. "Glad to be here." The set transformed as the cameras rolled, studio lights softening just enough to make the edges glow. A small monitor behind them displayed a faded photograph of Eagle Pass Rest Stop, the place where everything had changed. And beside it, the now viral drawing Mia had made. The tapping signal, the dogs turning towards her. Emily leaned in. The people of Maverick County know the story. The country knows it. But hearing it from you, that's different. Let's start simple. The light on camera 1 blinked red. Her tone lowered, gentler. Deputy Hale, how did you know Mia was in danger that day? Logan exhaled slowly. Then he placed his hand on Ranger's head. I didn't, he said. Ranger lifted his chin as if acknowledging the truth. Logan continued, his voice steady. He did. Ranger heard something no human could hear, a signal smaller than a heartbeat, and he refused to ignore it. The studio fell silent. Even the camera crew paused. Emily's gaze flickered between Logan and the old dog. For a moment, the room felt like that desert afternoon all over again. The heat, the stillness, the sound no one heard except the one who mattered. The director signaled to camera 2, zooming in on Ranger. And the dog didn't break the moment. He looked directly into the lens, eyes dark and steady, the same way he had stared into danger a year earlier. There was no fear in his posture, no old age hesitation. He was watching, listening, guarding, like he always did. Emily swallowed lightly, her voice softening further. People say dogs have instincts we don't. Do you believe that? Logan nodded. I've seen a lot in my career, enough to know instinct can be stronger than reason. Ranger didn't need orders. He didn't need proof. He just knew a child was asking for help, and he ran toward her. No hesitation. Ranger scooted forward slightly, resting his head on Logan's boot. A gesture so small, yet so deeply theirs. Emily smiled. And Mia, how's she doing now? Logan's expression warmed. She's thriving. She has a family who loves her. She's back in school. She's drawing, laughing, living. Everything a child should be doing. And Ranger. Logan glanced down at the dog lovingly. Ranger's retired now. He earned that. But he still checks on her every month. She calls him her guardian. And between you and me, he still acts like it. Emily breathed out a soft laugh. It's beautiful, Deputy. Truly. She then shifted towards the camera, preparing for the wrap-up. If you had one message for viewers watching, about dogs, about instinct, about hope, what would it be? Logan didn't think long. He didn't need to. He looked straight into the main camera, shoulders squared, voice low and honest. What's your story with a loyal pet? The room stilled, the question lingering like dust suspended in golden light. It wasn't a marketing line, it wasn't a headline. It was an invitation to remember, to honor, to share that quiet connection between humans and the animals who stand beside them. Sometimes as protectors, sometimes as healers, sometimes as the ones who hear us when the world cannot. The director signaled the fade-out. The lights dimmed. The recording ended. But the moment didn't, because Ranger stayed there a second longer, staring into the dark glass of the camera lens, his eyes reflecting something calm, old, and impossibly wise. As if he was still waiting for the next sound only he could hear. As if he was still guarding Mia, even from miles away. Emily took off her mic, stepped forward, and knelt to stroke Ranger's fur. He leaned into her slightly, polite but distant in the way working dogs often were. Logan watched with quiet pride. Thank you both, she said. This story, it means a lot to people. Logan nodded. It means a lot to me, too. As they walked toward the exit, Ranger slowed a bit, age settling into his joints, but his eyes never dimmed. The receptionists waved. A security guard snapped a photo. Someone whispered, "That's the dog who saved the girl." But Logan knew better. Ranger hadn't just saved Mia, he'd saved Logan too. Outside, the evening air was warm, a soft desert breeze brushing past them. Logan opened the truck door. Ranger jumped in with the dignity of a veteran who had nothing left to prove. Logan paused, looking back at the station, thinking of Mia, the rest stop memorial, the drawing on the wall of their K9 barn, and the question now echoing across living rooms all over the country. He climbed into the driver's seat, started the engine, and looked at Ranger through the mirror. Ready to go home? Ranger blinked once, slow and certain. As they pulled away, the narrator's voice, soft, warm, familiar, slid into the final beat, the one message meant for every viewer who had followed this journey. If this story moved you, if you believe in instinct, loyalty, and second chances, support the heroes with 4 paws who stand between danger and safety every day. Subscribe, share your story, and keep our German Shepherd family growing. Because out there in the quiet, someone may be tapping for help. And sometimes, a dog is the only one who hears it.